put them in a legal status of non-heritability. And of course, on many levels and over the last few generations, the economic injury has extremely manifested itself on extreme levels and bases in many areas. And so again, as we were talking about earlier, I wanted to go into Constitution because I know a lot of times when people make reference to the Constitution that was adopted from Muslim law or fatwa law by some of the hybrid Europeans who have been in agreement with Moors with treaties at North America and around the world and other geographical jurisdictions, i.e., that being the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Treaty of Tripoli, J Treaty, many of the other treaties, etc., all of which generally are regarded under the major treaty known as the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between Morocco and the United States, and consists of the nature of thought of ancient government construction and allodial thinking harmonic with nature's God and nature's law that recognizes hominidae or humanity and humanity's rights and development, often referred to as birthrights, in relationship to government structures or bodies politics, etc. However, what I wanted to bring to our attention to examine is the assumptions that many people have and have had that the principles behind the Constitution adopted for the States United, often referred to as the United States of America, and that is with a small u, lowercase u, which is the legitimate operations of hybrid sons and other Asiatic African original Picts and Moors Europeans, i.e. Iberians, who have been traveling to the North Gate for years and doing trade for years, but in the establishment of trade and government, i.e. in the most recent centuries, we're making reference to hybrid Europeans doing business at North America in accord with treaty and constitutional principles. Now, it's been very apparent for those of you who know some of the true history of, particularly in contemporary times, with humanity, and I know many of you in your quest for restoring justice and respectability to government bodies, and there are many even hybrid Europeans that have been working feverishly in these last few years to restore the fundamental legitimacy and integrity to government at North America. And they'll usually refer to the original republic, distinguished from the demo platform set up artificially, corporate entity operation set up by traitors and disingenuous congressmen and senators who overthrew the Abraham Lincoln administration during 1861. And so most of you who are scholars already know about the coup d'etat that they refer to as the Sine Die action by the Congress for the United States, where they went rogue, overthrew the republic for their own ends, and many of them being members of the secret societies and P2 Masons and Freemasons and Knights Templars, who have been misrepresenting for centuries the truth of the African origin of Masonry, and have corrupted many of the African and Babylonian symbols and a lot of the culture and have been using dark magic for the purpose of conquering humanity and creating miseries across the planet. We take this time to look at the concepts, some of the concepts that the people have had in relationship to that Constitution in its original nature, not just its format as adopted around 1788, 1789 era, etc., and had been since corrupted and altered by internal persons who were exercising misprision on multiple levels for the purpose of their not having to maintain obligations to treaties and to the Aboriginal indigenous people, as that conflicted with their unum sanctum and dom diversus and inter terra divina operations, etc. And those operations, as you all know, have been traditionally referred to and promoted around the world since those times under the banner of racism and prejudice, which is a cover-up for their unum sanctum operations. However, I wanted to take another look, for the sake of conversation, at the Constitution. And I was talking to Dr. Naila earlier, because we often have conversations about the ongoing political wars that have been waged on the people for the sake of fairly and justly trying to aid wherever we can to bring remedy and to encourage the people to take responsibilities in their affairs, etc., with a reasonable level of competence. And so this is, again, why we're dealing with Constitution, because I think that from the many ancient to modern ignominious wars, that have been reprehensibly waged against the Aboriginal people of the earth, have been executed under a very shallow guise of moral and political justice. That, of course, that's always been pretty much to hide the actuality of their agendas, etc. Although their agendas are becoming more apparent to people in these last maybe 20 years, which has also encouraged people to start looking at things and questioning things, and logically has much to do with what is called the conscious awakening of the Aboriginal people and with humanity at large. Because the corruption that has been established by the priesthood and has gone unchallenged for so many centuries is now being by their own hands exposed, etc. And people are better able or willing to start facing certain realities that for quite some time people have been in denial about. However, one of the other things that must be noted when you watch the social political battles that are taking place around the world, but particularly highlighted at North America under the defunct, decrepit, and extinct United States corporation company that has been comfortably paraded around the world as a country successfully for these last couple of centuries, etc., is now being exposed by their own deeds as being just what it is, an organized body of criminals who have been pretending to be Americans and have exported their corruption around the world and have pretty much contaminated all of the governments on the planet to the point that the economic and social structures or civilization structures around the world are on verge of collapse. And that is a reality. And due to that reality has much to do with people's willingness to listen to some of the things that have been said to them over the years that they have both ignored, criticized, mocked, and made satirical statements about, but yet it is hitting home now for many of them. And so more people are open to deal with reality now because of their economic and social injuries, etc., not necessarily because they were all of a sudden acting upon goodwill. Pain is a great teacher. Now, the ongoing war crimes and being waged against the peaceful inhabitants of Midgard Earth are central to the myriad corruptions facing the nations in these days. It has become indisputably clear that the de facto and corporate acting politicians and the criminal bishopric, together and in partnership, is obvious and should be addressed accordingly. Though we've been saying it for years, many people have criticized us violently for being honest about the relationship between the bishopric and the corporate state, knowing that the corporate state belongs to the Roman Catholic Church. They never were separate. But people's, you might say, willingness to defend their little clubs because of their own hypocritical participation, and then lying on Jesus, Muhammad, Allah, and all the prophets, etc., to make themselves feel comfortable. It's kind of ironic that even those are feeling the pinch or the thorns and the sword and the injury and the miseries and the sickness and the biological warfare and the economic crushing coming from the bishopric, who have been hiding behind the word religion when they're everything and anything but that, etc. However, let's look at the issues of hominidae as an example. Now, hominidae, or what you know as humans, are sentient biological species and are seeded with soul. And in most cases, or most incarnations, they are seeded with soul. Now, that living sentient being going through developmental and evolutionary stages, both corporal and incorporeal, and much of the evolutionary staging is intrinsically tied to learning by experience, though not limited to it. Now, constitution. Constitution is a noun and is essentially the expression of, or the act of, or the elements of, or by which something is composed, or made up, or made from. Now, in law, when we're dealing with jurisprudence, the Constitution is the composition of established principles, precedents, or rules by which a nation or a state or body politic formally operates or executes government. Now, when you're dealing with the biological, you were dealing with your cell salts, your phosphates, etc., which are used by the mother or the matriarchal or the female species in the biological form to construct physical bodies that we often refer to metaphysically as Solomon's temple or Solomon's temple. That's a metaphor for the actual physical body. And not necessarily a structured building as it's assumed in anthropomorphic teaching through religious structure. So when you're dealing with constitution, you're dealing with the cell salts, the state of mind, etc., and the accepted nature law philosophies that are used consciously or cognitively by females to construct the bodies of men for whatever purpose she brings them here for, i.e. the creation tools of mother, the cognate creation tools. And so that is also constitution. The other deal that I want to present to you that we all need to be cognate in the fact that earth is seeded. Now, so Midgard is seeded. So a seed is a noun and refers to a ripened plant or organic ovule, etc., containing an embryo. And a seed may also refer to a source or a beginning. Seed also contains within its nature and construct identifiable aspects and characteristics of the matrix from which it comes. And keep in mind, matrix means womb or creator. And so these are metaphors, and they're also metaphysical realities that are in their nature injected into the Constitution for the United States, coming from Anasi or Muslim fatwa law, etc. And a lot of people have not been aware of that.
There's a comment here I want to read to you from Marsha Lyman in Spirit. And they say, my Constitution is the way I put me together through the many eons of time and before there ever was time, on and in all dimensions.
Good. Now, and that is so vitally important, because when you're talking the Constitution, you must also be cognizant of what we know as timeline and dimension. Now, as you all know, timeline or time is a tool that we use by intellectual design to deal with record chronology. Though in the reality of the organics of Cosmo, there is no time in that concept. So now you're talking about planes or dimensions, which is harmonic with what is stated. Mm-hmm. And that is important because that has much to do with the awareness of constitutional principle. And very often when you're talking constitutional enforcement with people, they're often looking at the physical written constitution, i.e., as an example, the Constitution for the United States of America, Organic Republic, or the Zodiac Constitution law of the ancient Moors, which consists of geometry, the numbers 0 to 9, letters of the Arabic alphabet, 26 letters of the alphabet, etc., and mathematics, which comprises the Constitution for the Canaanite Moabite nation, in fact. Now, so you have both your physical or your corporal aspects and your incorporeal aspects. And of course, as you present an argument in constitutional enforcement, very often people will go to the written Constitution of 1788, adopted from Anasi Confederation by the hybrid Europeans to do business on the land, etc., and to execute judicial civil authority, etc., in what you call delegated construct, etc., for harmonics among the nationals, the Aboriginal people, and the citizens. Whereas when you recognize, as an example, reading the Constitution for the United States, and you're looking at say Article 3, Section 1 and 2, and you're looking at Article 4, Section 4, and Article 6, you will recognize that it has an international characteristics, because you're dealing with any controversies dealing with the citizens or people who are doing business in the states of the Union that comprise the several states, which comprise the Union of States, etc., in their different jurisdictional capacities. And so when you're looking at the corporates or the states, pardon me, you're looking at actually the same principles of individual nations in harmony of political organization, which comprises the United States or the States United, etc., harmonic. And so you have constitutions that are harmonic and not adverse to what you call the major federal constitution of the states, that would not be in contradiction in their character to the national constitution, etc. And whenever there's a controversy, those two constitutions would always be used. And of course, you know, when it comes to many of the social, economic, and political controversies that have been constantly taking place at North America, most of the people do not relegate themselves to using the supreme law of the land to address their issues. They would usually be guided by emotional outbursts or responses, or be drawn into the banal and juvenile arguments that were designed wrongly by de facto operators, and they would refer to it as race arguments and prejudice arguments, and they would bury themselves into the corporate constructs of what is known as the 14th Amendment, dead being, civil liter mortuus platform, seeking civil remedies that were actually never to be satisfied, etc. Again, I think clearly many people have not looked at the Constitution as having been seated, actually seated knowingly, and knowing that that there were beings among us that would never honor them. However, from a dimensional concept, it was seated because it is known, and it was known by the ancestors, that those principles would have to be applied, even though they were being abridged. They would have to be applied as things began to fall apart. Because that Constitution, the principles that underpin that Constitution for the United States are rooted in nature's God and nature's law, as many of you seen in the unanimous Declaration of Independence, etc., and was adopted by hybrid Europeans and Asiatics who were in the Continental Congress, etc., for organized government. However, by the hybrid Europeans making so much effort to write the Moors out of history, and to write the Moors out of the fact that the Continental Congress was predominated by Aboriginal Moors, etc., and high